a left right out. Here again, it's been a little while. I've had some things going on, done a little trading myself in the market. I've had issues, which I'm going to get into that a little bit because it goes into what we're seeing on the supply side of things. But anyway, so the markets today, I didn't even really pay attention that well. I have still a couple shorts out there. I took a little profits on some of it. I'm looking to get short again for a little bit, but I'm looking for a little pop, and I'll explain why. Because I think the CPI numbers are going to CPI numbers and some of these other numbers are going to shock, and you're going to get a little bump in the market possibly. I don't know. That's just what I'm looking for. You got to be nimble. I'm not giving any advice because it could go the opposite way because I'm looking for an overall downtrend. But here's what my thoughts. So we're looking at the inflationary data. Obviously, that's a big deal. And I've criticized the Federal Reserve about their budget, about supposedly they're supposed to be doing QT, and it's been QE for some sort. So I pulled up finally, the last Friday, the data, and we actually had the first significant decrease in the balance sheet of the Federal Reserve. So they are actively, I haven't gone into the balance sheet to see where these assets are coming from, where they're pulling from. Are they pulling from securities or the MBS side of their balance sheet or whatnot? But anyway, so it decreased significantly. So if you talk a 3-month period, we're looking at, well, it's not that much, but you're going from almost 9 trillion or 8.965 trillion down to now 8.91 trillion. Not much, but we're actually seeing a decrease. So that's a deflationary, that by definition, the very definition is deflationary. You're contracting the money supply in a sense. Or no, or in reality. But then on the other side of the coin, you have consumer credit hit another all-time high, I believe. And I don't have that one pulled up for me to reference at the moment, but I happen to scroll past and look at an article about consumer credit expanding again. And so that is inflationary, so you got to see which one outweighs the other. And we'll see usually the monetary side takes 1 to 2 quarters, where this consumer credit expansion is usually in the more immediate. What I'm seeing is that anecdotally is what people are doing with this credit thing is they're trying to maintain a certain lifestyle as prices are rising in various goods, essential goods and services. So in order to maintain certain things, certain aspects of their lives, they're having to go into even more debt, even more so than they already were. So if you're looking for an overall deflationary key metric, since the Fed isn't really, their balance sheet isn't contracting as fast as it was supposedly, what was given to us, is that consumer credit side of things. Watching the consumer credit markets, see when that starts contracting, or you see a lot of bankruptcies, or you see a lot of defaults on that realm, and you'll know when to when the cover your short. I'll just put it that way. When they cover your shorts. And the reason I say that is because that is when you're going to see that light switch where the Fed comes back in, because that's going to be a crisis moment in a sense. At least that's one of the things I'm looking for the Fed to actually, go, because now that's what I'm looking at. I'm looking at the Fed coming back in to rescue the markets, to rescue the economy. Even though we need a good recession, you need to wipe out all this malinvestment, all these companies that shouldn't exist, all these debts that shouldn't have incurred. We need a good house clean, but they won't allow that to happen. So right now they're still playing that game, and like I said, I guess you consider me wrong a little bit on my 1.25 to 1.5% call. To me, I still think that I'll consider in the short run wrong, but in the long term, that's going to be ultimately right, I think, because it takes 1 to 2 quarters for these things to actually have any meaningful impact in the market. And I think that 1.25 Fed funds rate, when you extrapolate that into the debt market or whatnot, that's a pivotal key area for some of these companies that are surviving off of debt. And you're definitely seeing in the mortgage market already where we're at right now, and where the interest rates in the mortgage are having a huge effect. The pin has been put in that bubble. You also look at recent data that's come out, the amount of deals that are falling apart, people that are backing out of deals because of the mortgage, the cost of a mortgage and what it's doing to their overall payment. Because most people look at payment wise when it comes to buying a house and like a car. And you also look at the car side of things now. You're seeing what those interest rates are doing to the car side of things. I'm not saying that it's necessarily a bad thing, but you're seeing all these years of really horrible monetary policy, socialistic monetary policy, because it's not a free market. All the demand has been pulled from. You're seeing that stuff erode now. anyway, so you're seeing payments in, I think that one of the articles I was reading about how the payments are more indicative of actual mortgage, which we've said that for years. And then you have expanding loan terms. Like I remember, because I worked at a dealership for a while, there was like all of a sudden somebody came out with a 96-month loan. I was like, to me, that's almost to a certain extent to the life of a vehicle in some regards. I mean, obviously depending, but that's craziness. Other things that have happened outside the market. And just full disclosure, so I have actually started nibbling at some gold stocks. Like not, I don't have a lot of money to put in these things, but I'm nibbling at them and in anticipation because the gold stocks have been beat down. I like silver and stuff under $20, and in the past I have bought it well under $20, recognizing these things. And now it's like, well, I'm looking at some of these gold miners that I made money off in the past, and I'm starting to nibble at them because right now we're seeing the market trying to price in some kind of tightening, and I'm looking in the future for the loosening again, the QE infinity. So I'm looking at that. I'm looking at the price of the cost of manufacturing, the cost of actually mining an ounce of gold compared to the cost what it is. And I'm looking at that. Now, granted, like what I've talked about in the past, there's a lot of manipulation in that market. In fact, there's a couple of key banks that are like chief manipulators in this from the state side. I mean, I know there's some international stuff going on as well when it comes to paper markets, but JP Morgan and Citibank, I think they're in the Citigroup, whatever, Citibank, notorious for overloading markets with paper contracts. I think they've been fined a number of times for colluding, or not colluding together, but colluding within those markets themselves, whether it be silver or gold. And it's pretty astounding that that's even legal. The paper asset can strip out the physical resource, and it's a pricing mechanism. It's to cover up central bank malfeasance in some ways, because the great reckoning is if you actually have a real market in a physical commodity asset, in which gold and silver traditionally are money. They traditionally are units of account, and that would happen if you didn't have people that are actually manipulating it. But even despite that, there becomes a point where these things have to stair step up. So now we look at the next monetary cycle, and we look at gold and silver itself probably going to that next step. If it's a currency crisis, then who knows where it'll go. But if we're able to get another QE session going on, you're looking at another stair step up for gold and silver. So that's what I'm looking at in the future. The other interesting things that have happened when we talk about we got the 4chan leak of Hunter Biden, which is absolutely comical. It's one of the funniest things I've ever seen. It's funny and it's sad at the same time because it's more confirming evidence about how corrupt this whole family is. He's a reflection of his father in a sense, maybe not to the same extent when it comes to the drug and alcohol abuse, but he's definitely those things have played a role in his or come from his childhood, how he was raised. But also one of the hilarious things that goes along with a lot of things that Trump and myself and a lot of other people have been pointed out about Biden and his weird touching of children and associations with certain people, is that Hunter had him saved as Pedo Peter or something like that. You can't write this stuff. It's so hilarious, and the fact that the media ignores it, and there's a more controversy that's popped out from this stuff. It's astounding. I don't see how you can believe that there's some kind of fairness in the media, that there's some kind of reality in journalism anymore, just from these inconsistencies of stories like this. Like, it's one thing to go attack Trump about a bunch of stuff and it turns out that's wrong, but have the integrity to come out and hey, this is wrong, but we still think he's kind of a weird dude. But it's another thing just to completely ignore the absurd actions of this character's son and he himself, and some of the evidence that come up from the laptop and some of these other things, and voice recordings and all kinds of stuff that implicate different things. Okay, now here's the other thing. So you have the assassination of the former Japanese prime minister. Here's another thing I want to get into, and it has more relevance to sorry, I keep sniffing, I got allergies and stuff, but more relevance to what's going on, and that's still along with the vax shots, or if a particular virus, I don't want to say it just because whatever, but there's a certain vaccine that's more based on traditional technology, protein adjuvant, that has shown pretty good results throughout the world. It's proved through most of the Western civilization and has come over here to the States. And it was part of the initial contract for the vaccine program under the emergency or under the pandemic stuff. It's funny that the CDC or the FDA and subsequently CDC have signed off on these the mRNA stuff, which is precarious in nature. If you look at some of the stuff that's leaking, some of the theories that were floated around that are now coming, there's a lot of supporting evidence for, and the like, and the waning, effectiveness of these things, and it's all perfectly explained in some of the theories. I don't want to totally get into it. I've done in the past. We can get into a little bit more as these theories have developed and they're becoming more and more supported. But this other vaccine that's been heard, it's been approved through the committee but hasn't been signed off, and so it hasn't got its EUA, is still held up as of where I'm recording, but over a month after it's been talked about. And then they had another vaccine meeting where they're trying to discuss whether they should update the vaccines because of the waning efficacy of, especially the mRNA ones. Well, this other company presented their data, and it was still promising against a wide range of variants. And one of the reasons being, well, this was some of my argument against the mRNA stuff as this thing was evolving, was the fact that you're taking one specific subunit of the spike and you're then putting it within your cell to replicate that. One, we don't know if, there's mistakes happen within replication. Two, as these things evolve, as the virus itself evolves, who's to say that portion of, or that subunit, or that portion of or that energetic area that we're replicating with the vaccine doesn't change? And that's what happens. Now, this other mechanism, this traditional mechanism that this other company is using to, in their vaccination, which is a protein hedging it seems to be a different or a larger portion of the spike. I don't know exactly how much of it is or what it is, but anyway, there's a certain antigenic area that is common in throughout the variants. And that being said, or that being a fact, and they display this here, that is why their vaccine shows efficiency or efficacy throughout the different variants. Like there's still residual, there's still a good, antibody response, good humoral response to the pathogen from this vaccination. And for the life of me, I'm wondering why we haven't authorized that if we're authorizing these other ones underneath this emergency use of the pandemic still going on. And even more so, why you wouldn't want to just shift towards that vaccine that's been through more trials, that has been approved throughout the world and doesn't have the same profile of adverse reactions as these other ones. To me, and this is just me, I don't have any supporting evidence besides the fact that maybe you can dig into some of these patent payments to some of these other characters. But even the panels, the FDA panel and this FDA panel on the updating of the vaccine agreed that this was pretty significant findings through this company. It's Novavax, by the way, but I just didn't want to throw that out. But anyway, what it leads me to believe, and my initial inclination, of course, I don't have any supporting evidence besides the fact that it hasn't been approved comparatively easy as the other ones, is that maybe they didn't pay off enough people or whatnot. Because to me, just theoretically, and the scientific mechanisms by which this thing operates just seem a lot more consistent with being a decent vaccine if you're going to have one. I'm not saying go get one, but if you're going to use one, let's use one that we have some kind of history of the technology, and it's also showing a better profile against a wide range of these ever-evolving COVID viruses, or COVID virus, the COVID-19 variations. I just had a fleeting thought that just popped away from my mind, but the other thing is, I look at it, let's say that all of them, the mRNA ones and this Novavax one, had similar efficiencies or efficacies, whatever you want to say. They were similarly efficient against whatever. You would still want to go with that Novavax one. And here's why, is because the mechanisms of everything in a complex system, and you learn this if you're in the military or if you're in some kind of business where you have logistics-wise, is like you want to do things as efficiently as possible. You want to get the most out of something with the least amount of moving parts. And the reason being is the more complex something is, the more rife of risk, or the more available risk there is, or the more there's a greater chance of things going wrong. In particular, that's why old men always complain about trucks. Trucks that have computers on. I didn't even get into my truck and what's going on there. But older trucks are easier to work on. If something goes wrong, and there's only a few components that really would go wrong, it's easier to deduce what is wrong, and there's less chance of something going wrong to begin with. If you introduce complexity into a system, the greater the chance of something going wrong, and that's what happens. So instead of just having your immune system recognize a spike that's already created, that's presented to your immune system, they've gone with the mRNA ones, where you take something that has to be uptaken by a cell, then has to be reproduced, and then presented. So what you're doing effectively with the protein adjuvant one is you're eliminating a whole series of steps that have to be taken for the vaccine to be to do what it's supposed to do. So to me, just from a systems looking at it like that, I'd rather have this one vaccine, or this kind of technology. And not say that mRNA can't be used somewhere else, but it's too complex right now, and we're seeing a lot of interesting things that are happening. I don't want to go too deep into it, but it just makes logical sense to have this other one there. Anyway, I'll go with the truck thing, because it's almost 20 minutes. I want to keep this under. So my truck's down. It's over a sensor of all things. It has to do with all the EPA crap they put on diesels now, or they have for the last 14 years or so. That's the only thing that ever goes wrong. The engine's perfect. The engine's fine, but it's all this EGR weird crap. Well, anyway, just like over the last couple of years, I've talked about this before, there is shortages in various things, ever increasing shortages. Whether it be if you have a diesel, you know that you've had to kind of almost hoard oil. Once you get a chance to buy it, you buy it. Otherwise, you might have to go without an oil change for an extra few thousand miles, because you got to locate this oil that seems to be just vanishing, and not there. Plus other things that seem to be in short supply. The oil filters, all kinds of stuff. That's just the vehicle. I'm not even talking about the food side of things. I'm talking about physical objects that are essential for us to even move other goods, is like these diesel products. Anyway, so this thing here, I go in this town I'm in right now, and I look for this mechanism, this sensor. One, they're out. Two, they're astronomically priced at this point, but it would take weeks to even get it sent home. So I go to Rock Auto, right? I buy it off Rock Auto, which I'm not like sponsoring or anything by them. I just buy stuff from them. They're relatively inexpensive, and they're usually really good about getting stuff here on time. So I get that. The thing does show up 2 days late, because I paid double to get it here, because time is money. I need my truck. Get it here, and the package is ripped in half. This is from FedEx. Package is ripped in half, or it's open, and then the packaging for the product is ripped in half, and the little sensor is busted. So instead of FedEx, when they realized that this has happened, it turns out they repackaged it, because Rock Auto comes in certain packaging with Rock Auto tape. This didn't have that. So it was busted in their facility. They threw it in some manila envelope and still shipped it to me, instead of like identifying that it's broken, which is so apparent, and then contacting the supplier, which would be Rock Auto, and letting them know that, hey, there's some damage to this. Instead, they just went ahead and sent it to me. So then it took an extra day. So then I had to contact Rock Auto, hey, which subsequently they gave me store credit. It's fairly obviously that FedEx screwed this one up. So then I had to reorder another one, and I'm still waiting from FedEx again, because that's who their carrier is, unless you want to wait an extra few days for UPS, but I need it as soon as possible. But anyway, it's indicative of one, the labor force just becoming very apoplectic or whatever. They just don't give a crap about doing their actual job. But two, also the company's services are degrading. I mean, talking about economically across the board. But then the shortages of supplies and vital little sensors or vital components of certain things, it's been like this for a couple of years, and we're kind of like a frog in a boiling pot. It seems like people are just getting used to this, or I guess they just don't know what to do. But it's not looking good. So you can look at the numbers, you can look at the market, and everything just, even there, doesn't look that great. But even if it was, when you're out in the real world, which you are, most of us are, and we are interacting and trying to get certain things that need to be got, whether it be food, whether it be like these parts, you realize that there's some really structural issues going on, and it's just bad. But anyway, I'll talk to you later. Like, subscribe. Peace.